So welcome to this event that honors teachers, and thank you for being here today. You, I'm sure, know this is our dining hall, but one thing I want to point out about the dining hall is that the names of all the graduates are on the walls from here on my left to about a third of the way down on the right there on the glass. It's a good way of telling you that this room is about everyone that's been here and the influences they've had, just as we're here because of the influences you've had on these students. So we began this program approximately a decade ago. It is a short program, so you don't have to listen to too much, but I hope what you do hear will be particularly meaningful and enjoyable. We want you to, and I'll repeat this because we have such a great crowd this afternoon, we want you to do two things after the meeting in here. We want you to enjoy some refreshments in the foyer of this building. And we want you to go to the library, because in the library we have purchased books in honor of all these teachers to be placed in the library in remembrance and honor of you. And so with this large crowd, it will be really smart for you to be moving back and forth rather than have everybody stay in the foyer. So I'll remind you of that at the end of the program. We have students at MBA, new students to MBA, from almost 50 different schools. So we have guest honored teachers here today from almost 50 different schools, and I'd like to point out that we have one from a distance. I knew about this one before the event, and then I learned just a moment ago about a second, one from Athens, Tennessee, who came a good distance, and one who came down from Allentown, Pennsylvania. So it's great to have people close and near. We are proud of teachers, obviously, and celebrate the teachers at the school. One of my favorite archival aspects about MBA, incidentally, I'm Brad Joya. I teach English, and I'm the headmaster here, for those who are new to the school today. One of my favorite things about the history or archives of MBA is that Tom Schulman, who graduated in 1968, wrote the films Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but he also wrote the film Dead Poets Society, which celebrates teachers. And as an English teacher, it was fun for me to come here 24 years ago and now get to know Tom very well. And recently my wife and I went up to New York with him to see the stage version of that film. And so it's a great part of remembering the importance of teachers. And I have a lot of great colleagues here who make this school run. But today you are the most important individuals, you who are being honored here. We are proud to do so as we admire a quotation on the campus: "A teacher affects eternity. He never knows where his influence stops." And then one other piece to this campus that I think you'll remember is that a lot of buildings are named after great benefactors, as they should be. But we have one building on the campus that a benefactor decided the building would be named in honor of a teacher, Mary Helen Lowry, who was here for 50 years. She had died by the time we made that decision, but it's always a pleasure to walk into that building and be reminded of the importance of teachers. I'm going to turn this program over now to Dr. Tim Boyd, who teaches history and is our academic dean, and he'll make a few comments.
So good afternoon. My name is Tim Boyd. I'm the academic dean here, and I also wanted to say just a few brief words of welcome to you all and to thank you for being here today. In a little while, you're going to hear from two great students at either ends of their MBA careers, and they will tell you why they are grateful to the teachers that they have had over the years. But what I wanted to do was to say a word of thanks on behalf of the MBA faculty for all that you have done. And as Brad mentioned, the influence of a good teacher can manifest itself in a vast number of different ways, but one of the most relevant in terms of what the teachers here are thankful to you for is nicely captured by one of the incidents from my first year at MBA. Now, it is an incident, I confess, that I think of every year when it comes to this event, and so to those of you who've been here before, it may sound somewhat familiar, but it's just tough to beat in terms of aptness, and so I ask your forgiveness for that on the basis that when as a teacher you find what seems to be a good lesson plan, it is defensible sometimes to make use of it more than once. But in any case, I arrived here just over 7 years ago, and in my first year I taught 4 classes of European history. Actually, my graduate work is in American history, but I think it was assumed to be more convincing to the kids if I taught them European history. So that's where I've been. But in any case, about 10 days into my high school teaching career, it was time for my first parents' night at MBA, and having just about memorized the names of the 60-odd students I was teaching, I now had 4 short 7-minute windows to explain myself and my class to the parents. And as you might imagine, first year of teaching, this is all about just making sure you do and say the right thing. And I expect that even the most distinguished and experienced teachers here in the room would remember the anxiety you first had to answer the question, so what exactly are you teaching my child to a room full of parents? And actually, as a side note, I'm very glad that my first experience was not the same as that of a very distinguished and veteran MBA teacher who told me when he had his first parents' night at MBA, he was driving down West End, running a little bit late in a giant VW camper van, and a woman in a BMW cut him off as he was trying to make a left turn, and in his frustration, he directed a highly expressive hand gesture in her direction, made it to school on time, rushed into his classroom, only to find her sitting there in the front row, with a name tag identifying her as the name of one of his star students. Anyway, nothing that distressing happened. So in fact, what happened at first seemed extremely flattering. At the end of one of these class sessions, a parent came up to me and said, "I just wanted to thank you and to let you know that this is Jack's favorite class." And my ego immediately began to swell. There were at least 3 Jacks in that class, and I couldn't help notice that none of them had the same name as the name tag on this mother's shirt. "Yes," she went on, "he just loves American history," which I also admit sounded odd, but I thought perhaps in her enthusiasm she had misspoken. And then she finished, "He especially likes that hilarious accent you do when you're doing impersonations." And now I will concede that my accent may sound a little unusual to the boys, but even in that moment, hilarious seemed harsh. And I really don't do any impersonations in class, or really anywhere else for that matter. And as it turned out, of course, her son wasn't in any of my classes. Nor was he in the right grade to be in one of my classes, nor was he in the classroom where I taught my classes. I was getting credit for the fun this boy was having in Dr. Clay Bailey's US history class, which met next door. But this does speak nicely to a phenomenon in education, and it's very well exemplified here today, namely that very often it's another teacher who reaps the benefits of what the first teacher has done. And that is why I want to say thank you to you this evening. It is an old saying that it's a bad workman who blames his tools, but one might equally ask, how often does any kind of workman thank the person who laid the foundations? The boys you send us are already in great shape, and our job becomes both much easier and tremendously more enjoyable as a result. We get to guide them through the final 4 or 6 years of their schooling, and it's important that we do that well, but every time we get to see an exceptional student walk across the stage at his high school graduation, we need to remember that much of this is due to the foundations he was given by all of you. And this is true in all walks of life. Yes, Nick Saban deserves the plaudits as he creates one national championship team after another, but so too do all the Pee-wee and middle school coaches who first identified a young player's potential and worked with him to develop him into someone good enough to be recruited by Alabama. Though, as another quick side note, if any of you saw the story from this past week, there are apparently some Alabama fans who are worried that their new freshman quarterback, who is from Hawaii, will have trouble with, quote, the language barrier now that he's living in the States. So you may wonder if for all their footballing success, the geography program could do with a little help. And I will say, full disclosure, I'm a Vanderbilt fan, so poking fun at these stories is the only success over Alabama that I will ever get to enjoy. But either way, this occasion is not just, therefore, for the boys to say thank you, but for their future teachers to say thank you as well. And that is what I would like to extend to you on behalf of all the faculty. In a moment, you will be hearing from the students yourselves, and as Mr. Joy mentioned, there are going to be some books in your honor in the library. I would also encourage you, if you are interested in seeing what many of the students become once they are here, we have our student art show going on at the moment, which is over in the Davis building just on the other side of the quad, which would also be well worth a visit. But again, Thank you for all that you have done for these boys. Thank you for coming to MBA this afternoon, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the program.
Thank you, Tim. At almost every program, we have some music, and so we have asked Orman Nimmo to please come up now, and he's going to perform a piece of music that I think many of you will recognize. It is from a selection from The Lord of the Rings. Thank you. And as you heard, one of our seventh graders is going to speak now, Hogan Walker, if you'd please come up, and then he'll be followed by senior Daniel Cowan. Hogan was back with his family. Here he comes.
Hello, I'm Hogan Walker, and I'm a seventh grade student at MBA, and I will be presenting my, my paper that I wrote on Miss Bess, my fourth grade teacher at Julia Green. My teacher's name is Miss Bess. She was my fourth grade teacher at Julia Green. Her favorite subject was history, and at moments she was very strict, although she was not mean. She was strict because she wanted to push me academically and as a person. In her class, she taught me how to set the table, manners, and lessons. She was always on us about manners, and when I was wrong, she would tell me. On the academic side, we memorized poems and speeches. She taught me cursive, and she always gave us a vocabulary word for the week. Not only did she teach us character and knowledge, she was a brilliant teacher, as well as a very kind teacher. I feel like Miss Bess and I had a special relationship that I did not have with most teachers. I always felt comfortable expressing my struggles with Miss Bess. In fact, I went to visit her at the end of fifth grade. I think I learned a lot with Miss Bess. Also, I think I grew a lot. With Miss Bess as a teacher, I'm confident I will accomplish the MBA motto, Gentleman, Scholar, Athlete. Thank you.
I was out of town on Thursday for an alumni gathering, and I emailed Daniel about his talk. I usually ask the seniors especially to show me their talks, and I work a little bit with them. I knew Daniel would do a great job. You'd be pleased to know he was very prompt about sending it to me, told me he'd revise it a little bit. But I tell you all that to say what a great individual he is. He is involved in diverse activities like mock trial, where he's been for the last few hours practicing for a fall competition. And then yesterday, he was in Louisville and played 2 hockey games, or at least 1 hockey game. We played 2. And, it's fun to see someone like him with those diverse interests. He was just telling me he's interested in Furman, Wake Forest, Davidson, and Princeton. And said, I'm really busy. This has been going to be a tough fall. So thank him for fitting all this in. He'll do a great job. Welcome Daniel to the podium.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. As Mr. Joya said, I'm Daniel Cowan. I'm a senior here at MBA. Now, teachers hold an undeniable amount of significance in the growth of a student. Generally, students will spend more time at school during a school year than they will with their families, a fact that puts an enormous amount of responsibility in those who educate us. As such, we are impacted by each and every teacher that we spend time with, whether that be a great amount or a little amount. And our success is founded on the knowledge that we gain from those who educate us. Now, many of my former teachers have led me to a great appreciation for what you all do each and every day. But in the interest of time, I'll just tell you about one tonight. Now, in 6th grade at J.T. Moore, my homeroom and social studies teacher was Miss Huffaker. She was self-described crazy, full of energy, and genuinely interested in both her students and the material that she taught. Our class spent a total of more than 3 hours with her each day. And so while we spent a great amount of time learning, we had just as much time to converse and get to know each other. She took the time out of each day to ask how everyone was doing, talk about current events, and give meaningful advice to those who needed it. Each day we started class by watching CNN Student News, which is a video series for students that recaps the current events. And afterwards, we would discuss how the events impact our lives and how we can learn from them. And this was just one of the ways that Mrs. Huffaker would try to ensure our growth, not only as students, but also as citizens in the community. Now, every day, she would ask us what the latest gossip was. Now, while I thought it to be odd at the time, I came to realize that she asked because she genuinely cared. She loved to hear about our lives because I think she embraced her role not only as a school teacher, but also as a life teacher, so to speak. And that is to say, her daily gossip sessions with us were a reflection of her wanting to both ensure that we were safe and happy, and change our definition of what school meant to us. And to Ms. Huffaker, I think to go to school meant not simply to sit in a classroom and be fed material according to her curriculum, which sometimes it is. But I think to her it also meant to form meaningful relationships while growing an understanding of the world around you. And of course, to take the occasional test. Now I remember to this day that she would end each class with one phrase. We would walk out the door and she would look at us and say, "I love you dearly." Well, for these reasons and many more, we loved Miss Huffaker too. Now, it's teachers like Miss Huffaker that make me realize how truly important each and every teacher in here is to the development of students and ultimately to the future of our society. Your influence is why we're here at MBA, why we do so well here, why we go off to great colleges, and ultimately why we lead very successful lives. Your invitations to this reception are testaments to your wonderful achievements as teachers, mentors, and citizens. Thank you very much for being here and for molding these great boys into the gentlemen, scholars, and athletes that they are today. Today we celebrate you, and again, thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Daniel. So as I said, this was going to be a short, I hope, meaningful program for all of you. Now, my instructions one more time. Since there are many of you, I would recommend about half of you go over to the library right now, or even a few more than that, and see the books, and be certain that you find Kit Lechleiter. Kit has envelopes and certificates for all of you. And then come on back, those of you that are going to the library, and have some refreshments, and all of you enjoy this time together and celebrate these teachers. It is a privilege to have you on campus today. I thank my colleagues, Greg Farrell and Kit Lechleiter in particular in the admissions office, and Angela Klausner and Robbie Quinn in the library for their help in making this a meaningful afternoon. Look forward to seeing all of you. Have a good afternoon.